Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review, and welcome to a special edition of Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And I'm here today to talk to you about Relic Hunter Season 1, Episode 2, The Headless Nun. Now that's a title, a nun with her head off. So this is probably one of my all-time favorite episodes, mainly because I remember watching this one specifically when I was growing up, and I recorded bits and pieces from this episode. What I used to do back in the day when this show came out, I used to record the action scenes and a couple of other scenes that had like Sydney in it. This was such a fascinating show. I've talked about this before. Go watch that video. Relic Hunter was an amazing syndicated show that lasted for 3 seasons, and it stars Tia Carrere. Tia Carrere was born in Hawaii, and she is half Chinese. I forget what the other halves are. But yeah. And this was such a big thing that happened in the late 90s. Like, she used to do little small time stuff on TV, like guest appearances on like Married with Children. But of course, she got her big start with Wayne's World. I've never seen that movie, but people was always talking about her because she has such a gorgeous, unique look to her. And so, then all of a sudden, she got her own TV show where she was the lead. And what's so crazy about that is that she is not only just a woman of color, but an Asian woman of color and stuff. And that was really unheard of. Back in like the 90s and stuff, it's very rare for a lot of people to get their own show, especially when they're like a woman or a person of color. Normally when that happens, it's a sitcom. The most famous one I can think of was Family Matters. Family Matters was a spin-off of Perfect Strangers, and it starred that of Harriet. Yes, that's right, the wife. She was on Perfect Strangers, and she worked in the elevator thing. And then they spun the show off with her and created her family. And then of course Steve Urkel took over the entire show. And even though the show spin off with her, it never focused on her for some bizarre reason. So, like I said before, it's a real rare thing that happened. And this show is basically Xena meets Indiana Jones, or Laura Croft or something like that. Every week was episodic, and like I said before, it would start off with a flashback to the olden days where something would get stolen, and then it'll go to present day where somebody wants her to look for it. And in the first season, it was mostly more realistic vibe to it, but then by season 2 and 3, they went the more supernatural fantasy route and stuff. Now, from what I've researched, I don't believe none of these flashback stuff or the things that got stolen and they're looking for, I don't think they ever existed, because I can't find no historical reference of this whatsoever. And so in this episode, it starts off in Nova Scotia back in the 1600s. And there we get some French people on a boat, and they're on the land, and their bosses working them to death. And so the captain, he sees somebody spying on them with a cloak on. So he chases after that person. The person stumbles, and for whatever reason, he takes out his sword and he chops the person's head off. He later discovers that it's not only just a woman, but a nun, hence the title of the Headless Nun. And so he continued to have his men work as he brought back the decapitated body. And one of them didn't want to work for him no more and tried to run off, and he shot him. Basically, he built a fort, and he put a lot of valuable stuff there. Jewels, gold, diamonds, rubies, you name it. And so then it goes to the present day, and it's Sydney, and she is flying a plane. She just retrieved a crown and she's heading back to like the States and everything. And so she's talking to Nigel and everything, and then all of a sudden, the craziest thing happened. You see a man coming out the storage area, and he steals the crown. When she sees that, she calls him Mackenzie. He's like a rival relic hunter, but he's more dangerous. And he promised the crown to some prince. And so they fight and they struggle. And it's a really cool fight. And she can normally whoop a lot of butt. But, since they're in a plane and it's on autopilot, she's kind of like stumbling a little bit. And he has a gun. So he takes out the controls in the plane and he parachutes on out of there, leaving her there. I'm like, holy crap. So she's doing her best to stabilize it, but she crashes, and she crashes in Nova Scotia. And this is like really thrilling, man. Like, we've had like two amazing like starters with the whole flashback stuff and now the present day on the plane. Now, sadly, the whole her and Mackenzie thing never gets settled and we never see him again. So they kind of just left that into the air, but I wish they would have like followed up on it. So when she wakes up, she's in the nunnery. Is it called a nunnery? No, it's called what's a nun church called? I forget. But anyway, she's woken up by some nuns, and one of them, when they find out who she is, they want her to look for the head of their fallen sister that happened so many years ago, well, 400 and stuff. And so, she calls Nigel up and everything. And by this time, Nigel and Claudia, they're having some really serious discussions about life, the meaning of life, and, spirituality and stuff like that. So, he heads on over to Nova Scotia and he's lost. And he sees this very attractive woman just like running and stuff. And so she's jogging and she gives him directions to the church. And there he finds a nun and he asks where Sydney is. She turns around. And the most hilarious thing, this is my favorite part, is Sydney dressed as a nun. And he is shocked and surprised. See, this is only the second episode. And in the first episode, he met her for the first time. So they just now started working together. And so he doesn't know that much about her. And he's like, my God, like, you haven't. Well, I guess you have. I guess God was the point of it. He's all like, I've had thoughts about like stuff like that too, but I wouldn't go that far. But she assures him that, she couldn't help but wanting to try on a nun outfit, but she hasn't converted. I swear, these two have the best banter ever. They have the best chemistry ever on the show. It's weird. I wonder, do those two even still keep in touch? I know he has social media. It's been a while since I've been on his page. I don't know if he follows her. And to tell you the truth, it's weird. On her, all her social medias, you never see her post anything about the shows that she did in the past. Only like current stuff and things that's going on in her life. And I've never seen her ever mention this show. And I wonder why. And I also wonder why it got canceled. There are rumors going around that actually I think it had to do with her not wanting to be on it no more. I forget what I read. It was years ago. It had something to do with she doesn't like doing the same thing over and over, or she wanted to get like doing other projects or something like that. Or maybe she wanted to go back to movies or something like that. I can't remember what, because she still acts to this day. And she's going to be in a live action Lilo and Stitch movie, but she's not playing Nani because, she can't. And so, yeah. And so, she tells him, what's up and everything. And they talk to, the nuns. And there's another hilarious scene where he has his own room. And he has to go to the restroom, which is in the hallway, so he can brush his teeth. He's in there, and all of a sudden, a woman comes out with a towel wrapped around her. It's the woman that was jogging. He had no idea she was a nun. because she doesn't dress like one and everything. She dresses in regular clothes, and she tells them, we've come a long way since, like, wearing like what people like to call the little penguin outfits and stuff. And he is so shocked because he probably had like a thing for her and stuff. Sadly, this is all we see of him and her. I wish they could have had like more scenes between those two. And it's so funny because she's wrapped in the towel, and here comes an older nun who is not approving of this. And so, like, they go to like the library, they're setting up the internet. This is around time the internet started to boom and everything. And so this dude named Derek, who comes there once in a while, he's the one who funded them to have like the internet and stuff like that. And so the nun lady tells them that Sister Eveline, she's the one who had her head chopped off. And so they're looking for her head so they can place it with the rest of her body that's been buried. And she tells them the legend of, like, the French explorer and all this other dude, and how, like, he put the dude to death and killed all the people who murdered people. And then they built like a fort, and they built their monastery over like the fort. And so, like, that's where, like, they didn't even know that. So somewhere is like, on the lands somewhere, all that stuff is buried and her head is there, but it's like secret and everything. And so, like, that night when Nigel went to like go to sleep, all of a sudden somebody set, like, the building on fire for some bizarre reason. And, like, it's a person dressed in a cloak similar to the one Angeline wore when she had her head chopped off. And I love the scenery, I love the cloak, I love the fog, I love the night, I love the setup of it. And so, like, in the morning, Sydney's looking around and she sees an explosive device that, like, set off the fire. And so she's telling it to, like, the fire department and police, but they're being arrogant because they don't want to take orders from, like, a woman and stuff. And so Sydney, at some point, her and Nigel, they go down in the tunnels to where the fort is. They have to get some equipment to, like, open the gated door. Once they're in there, they find like a tree carved into like a brick. So they chop away at it, and they find, I think, a canteen or something like that. And inside is a teeny tiny map. And so it's half a map, and they have the rest of the other half that got ripped in half. And they're looking, they don't know where none of this area is, right? Because, back in those old days when they used to make maps, they'll just draw like a tree, a brick, and, like, some land and ocean, and then X marks the spot. And they're all like, well, where's everything else at? Because everything's so different now. So, like, the nun lady takes them to, like, this dude who's been there for like ever. Like, he's so old, and he works on the grounds. And he said literally, when he was young, there was nothing but open fields, and now they have like golf courses and buildings and all that other crap. And so they're looking for a tree, and Nigel just happens to stumble upon it and everything. And, like, the tree they made into like a bench. So they're on top of a mountaintop. So they rappel down, like, but Nigel, dude, I love Nigel. This dude is so hilarious. Like, Sydney can rappel like easy, you know what I'm saying? Because she's used to doing that there and stuff. Nigel, on the other hand, is very scared. It makes for some very hilarious scenes. Well, as soon as he gets down there with her and stuff, they're looking around, they're trying to find what they have to find. But she ends up falling into, because there's booby traps and everything. And then it's like, she falls into a giant pit hole and everything when Nigel has to like save her. And I really love it because it's really a giant hole and the sand falls down. Very practical. And I love how they set that up on the little stage that they're on and made it look like a cave and everything. And so when they find like the treasure and stuff, somewhere in there is like, the severed head. And then all of a sudden, here comes the bad guy of the episode. It's the person who set the fire. It's Derek, the dude who set up the internet stuff. And he works along with one of the firefighters. And the reason why, like, he did all that was to get them, like, to set things in motion. So I guess they could like find, like, the treasure, because he just greedy and wanted all the treasure. There's tons of treasure down there, and for whatever reason, I guess he has swords. No. He has a gun, and so Sydney. This is the part where they start the action. I love this. It's always like some great action, but I love the action in this episode because Sydney, who normally whoops people's behind, is taken by surprise. She has like a vine in her hand, and she uses it as a whip to like try to like grab the dude's like body and sling him around, but the vine broke and her expression's kind of like crap. So she picks up her knife and she throws it at him, and it like ricochets, it knocks his gun out his hand. Then they like pick up swords and they start fighting with swords. The sword action could have been a bit better. It was a little wonky. It gets better in other episodes and other seasons and stuff. But like, this is only the second episode. So the fight scene wasn't really that great, but it was okay for at least the second episode. So of course they whoop on the dude. Well, at least she does, Nigel and stuff. And so the day is saved and everything. The nuns now not only have the severed head, but they have all those jewels and everything, which they're probably going to sell so they can get some money off of and stuff like that. And so, it's great. Now that dead nun lady has her head back, you know what I'm saying? At her gravesite. That's gotta be very disturbing, being buried underground and your head is missing. You should be complete, you know what I'm saying? And so it ends with Nigel, no, it ends with Sydney going back to her university and Claudia's talking to her because Nigel's not there. Nigel has had a spiritual, religious experience. He's been having it since the beginning of this episode. And, being with the nuns and everything, he wants to find God. So where does he go? Another monastery. But this one has monks. And so he takes a bit of a sabbatical and everything. But yeah, this show is great. You can find it on like Tubi or like Roku channel, all those free streaming apps and stuff. This was really a great show, and I love how independent and strong Sydney is. She's very highly intelligent. She's able to go from like, point A to point B to point C just by like finding clues. She doesn't let nobody get in her way. There's always great action and stuff like that. And the backstories, I always love the flashback stuff. They're so unique. Like in The Emperor's Bride in China, this one emperor put his wife to rest in a sarcophagus made of white jade. And then all of a sudden, a bunch of bandits attacked. And he closed up the sarcophagus and he did some kind of locking mechanism that's kind of like a puzzle. And, they try to fight like the bandits off, but the bandits got away with like his dead wife's body, the pure white jade like sarcophagus, and the golden necklace she had around her neck and stuff. And it's just like, it's really unique stuff they came up with in this show. And it should have lasted longer. Okay, after further research, it turns out this is a French ghost story that this episode is based off of. But there's two different versions. The version of a man chopping her head off in the woods. And then there's another version where two sailors chop off her head and take like treasure and stuff like that. So in the show, they combine both stories and everything. That's kind of neat to find that out. I wonder, is it really true though or not, Okay, I just went back and found out why Tia quit the show. She said her biological clock was ticking and it was time for her to start a family. Okay. That sucks. But I do respect her decision. But still, man, like, Happy Asian and Pacific Islander month, everybody. Alrighty, well, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.